Throughout the weekend, and London Tonight that returns on Monday at 6 o'clock.
Now though, marking 50 years of news on ITV, Anna Ford joins Mark Austin for the evening news. From the pair of us, have a very good night.
Goodbye.
Killed escaping the danger as Rita closes in. At least 20 pensioners are dead after their bus explodes while fleeing the hurricane. We'll have the very latest live from Texas on a day when we're joined by the last of our guest presenters celebrating 50 years of news on ITV. Welcome tonight to Anna Ford.
Thank you, Mark.
Good evening. Also on the programme, 15 years for the British jihadist on the verge of committing a terrorist outrage.
The evidence clearly shows that he was planning to commit an act of terrorism, whether here or abroad, we don't know, but the British public have been spared his attention.
A widow's word. The wife of one of the London bombers speaks of the realisation that one day she'll have to tell her children what their father did. And giving thanks, war veterans remembering the pioneering surgeon who treated their horrific burns.
Good evening. They were fleeing from one disaster and became engulfed by another. 24 elderly Americans have been killed escaping from Hurricane Rita. The bus, supposedly carrying them to safety, burst into flames and the frail occupants couldn't get out. It happened near Dallas on one of the main escape routes in Texas, Interstate 45. It's brought tragedy and chaos to the evacuation of huge areas of America's Gulf Coast as Rita looms menacingly just over the horizon. The precise path of the hurricane remains unpredictable this evening, but tonight officials say it's heading relentlessly towards the towns of Beaumont and Port Arthur, with 135 mile per hour winds threatening catastrophic damage. Robert Moore is in Galveston for us tonight. Robert.
Mark, we're expecting landfall in about 12 hours, and for the first time, the winds are just beginning to pick up. But Hurricane Rita has already claimed her first victims, those elderly, those frail, those vulnerable people heading out of Houston towards Dallas. They were victims of an increasingly desperate and an increasingly chaotic exodus.
And by the time the emergency crews got on the scene, not one but two explosions had occurred as the fire...
What caused this inferno, we do not know. But this was a tragedy waiting to happen. With chaos on the highways and with 2 million people trying to evacuate at the same time.
People who passed by attempted to break windows out of the bus to rescue the people trapped inside.
At first light, the destruction was still clearer, and so was the horror for those who tried to help.
Poor little guy I was helping was, 90 years old, crying, looking for his wife, and found out she didn't make it off. It was hard.
This accident just compounded what's become one of the world's worst traffic jams. Hurricane Rita has changed lives here, even before her first violent winds have reached shore.
Is virtually at a standstill.
Many motorists are running out of fuel. Rita is stalking them from behind. Traffic chaos lies ahead, and they can go nowhere. The governor of Texas is trying to reassure people they made the right decision to flee.
I want to say something to all those individuals that are stuck in traffic right now. Stay calm, stay patient. You've done the right thing.
Others might disagree as arguments raged around petrol stations.
Everybody should be able to sit up their cars and get out of here and get their families out of here.
In contrast to the death and chaos on the highways to the north, just look at Houston and its freeways, virtually abandoned. The mayor of this city describing it as perhaps the largest and most successful evacuation of an urban area in American history. And you can see what he means. While many communities are now ghost towns, some people are refusing to evacuate. We met these two brothers in Galveston, defiant.
We're stuck here now. We're going to try and ride it out the best we can, do what we can to survive.
They've got tools at the ready. They've even rehearsed reaching the attic to escape flooding. officials are issuing macabre warnings to those who are staying behind to make sure their corpses can be identified.
If some people insist on staying and believe that they can weather this kind of storm, that perhaps they should write their social security numbers on their arms with indelible ink.
And in the first signs of what's to come, in the last few hours, the weakened levees around New Orleans are being breached again by the storm surge. This region is battening down and preparing for catastrophic damage. Robert Moore, ITV News, in Galveston, Texas.
Well, a second super-strength hurricane in less than a month has left many asking if this is evidence of global warming. And if so, will America finally sit up and listen?
Britain's chief scientific advisor warned today that the number of violent hurricanes would only increase unless climate change is tackled. Nina Nanar reports now on the storm warnings.
Are we now seeing irrefutable evidence that hurricanes like this are man-made? First Katrina, now Rita. A growing number of climate experts say the world's biggest polluters must wake up to the fact that global warming is having an increasingly violent impact on our weather.
Hurricane Rita is one of the most intense storms on record, and people are asking why so soon after Katrina. Hurricanes aren't getting more frequent, but they are getting more intense. And scientists say it's all down to global warming raising the temperature of the sea. Hurricanes begin as tropical storms over warm seas off Western Africa. They feed off the warm, deep waters, which must be at least 27 Celsius for a hurricane to form. As they travel over the Atlantic and then the Gulf of Mexico, the hot waters act like rocket fuel. The warm, wet air gets sucked up, it cools, and then forms into more cloud. As it does, it injects huge amounts of energy into the hurricane, intensifying it. In the last 35 years, the number of severe hurricanes has doubled. That same period has seen sea surface temperatures increase by 0.5 Celsius.
The stronger hurricanes like Katrina and like Rita, that's Category 4 and Category 5 hurricanes, there is evidence emerging that they're actually becoming more powerful, and we're seeing more frequent events of that type of hurricane.
The scientific world is divided over the exact impact of global warming, but there is little to comfort those currently suffering at the hands of our savage weather. Nina Nanar, ITV News.
Well, let's return to our correspondent Robert Moore, who's in Galveston. Robert, they're warning tonight of catastrophic damage when Rita hits. How well prepared are they?
Well, Anna, many people say that Houston is perhaps the best city in the world to deal with a major hurricane. Of course, we'll find that out over the next 12 to 24 hours. But the real problem we have is this, that Rita is an extremely, extremely slow-moving storm. So she won't just roar past. She's going to hover over us. And some people are predicting that she might have a sustain over a particular spot, hurricane force winds, which could last up to 16 hours. So combine that with a storm surge of up to 20 feet with rain that could amount to about 20 inches, and you can see the size of the problem that the city authorities really face in this corner of southeastern Texas. Can any city really be prepared for this? There are a few people still left here, us included, and I think it's fair to say as we watch those weather reports come in, all of us are increasingly nervous.
Robert, thank you.
Now, he was described by police as an international warrior who travelled the world waging a jihad against the West. Today, 34-year-old Andrew Rowe was jailed for 15 years for terror offences.
Rowe, a Briton who converted to Islam, was found guilty of planning a terror attack with notes on making bombs and coded messages in his possession.
Well, our UK editor John Ray is live at the Old Bailey this evening. John.
Mark, the evidence presented here against Andrew Rowe might seem less than damning, but it was a feature of this case, and it'll be a feature of future cases that the police say they had to pounce before the terrorists could strike. And tonight, security sources are convinced they have a major Al-Qaeda operative behind bars. A petty crook and a drug dealer who turned to Islam for salvation and was instead transformed into a holy warrior, a dedicated jihadist who travelled the world for his cause. A self-styled Mujahideen fighter, first blooded in Bosnia's bitter civil war, so radicalised, say security sources, that he grew into a key player in Al-Qaeda's global campaign of terror.
Andrew Rowe is a very dangerous man. He's well used to violence. He was planning to use violence in the future. The evidence clearly shows that he was planning to commit an act of terrorism, whether here or abroad, we don't know, but the British public have been spared his attention.
When police raided his homes in West London and in Birmingham, they found handwritten instructions on firing a mortar. And this code list, mobile phone models substitute for what prosecutors called a shopping list of terror. It was hidden in a video cassette box at the back of a wardrobe. Nokia 3610 meant weapon, another model, airport, and another, army base. He was detained at a British checkpoint on the French side of the Channel Tunnel. In his luggage, socks rolled into a ball with high traces of explosives, though the jury did not convict him on this evidence.
So Rowe had been under surveillance for some time, but he was arrested before he could make it back to this side of the Channel Tunnel. Security sources believe this international jihadist had been ordered back to Britain by Al-Qaeda's high command to plan some terrorist outrage on his home soil.
In the previous 8 years, Rowe had obtained 4 passports, visiting the world's Islamic hotspots: Bosnia, Croatia and Slovenia, where he was moved by Muslims' plight, Chechnya, and almost certainly to Al-Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan and Pakistan. He also went to Thailand and Malaysia, where he met an alleged accomplice, Lionel Dumont. Dumont, a French Algerian, is accused of a number of terrorist plots. He and Rowe were together again just before Rowe's arrest.
People like Dumont are known for sending off amateurs around the world with a little bit of advice, a little bit of commitment and maybe a little bit of training to go and do their worst in the countries that they come from.
Just what Rowe was planning we might never know. But tonight this globe-trotting terrorist's future is behind bars. John Ray, ITV News.
One of the alleged July the 21st failed suicide bombers made his first appearance in a British court today.
Hussein Osman, who was extradited from Italy, is charged with plotting to cause death and carnage on the London Underground. Tonight, the 27-year-old remains in custody in Belmarsh High Security Prison, along with the 3 other alleged bombers. And there was a dramatic terror alert at Manchester Airport today, which ended when police used a taser stun gun on a man seen acting suspiciously close to a parked aircraft.
Bomb disposal experts were called in and parts of the airport's terminals 1 and 2 were closed. The man is now being held under the Mental Health Act.
Her husband carried out a massacre that appalled the world. Today, the widow of Jermaine Lindsay, the man behind one of the London tube bombings on July the 7th, described her horror at her husband's actions.
In an interview with the Sun newspaper, Samantha Luthwaite said that Lindsay had been poisoned by visits to radical mosques. Paul Davis reports on the killer's wife.
She says she'll never understand why he did it, but she'll spend the rest of her life with the knowledge that the man she loved, the father of her children, was a mass murderer. This is the way the world remembers Jermaine Lindsay, a suicide bomber on his way to slaughter people he's never even met before. His wife Samantha prefers to remember the young man she met and married, the happy family man, before he came under the influence of the fanatics.
He loved his son more than anything and loved me, yet these people managed to twist him so much that he could turn his back on those who meant so much.
The bomber's widow says it was after he began attending radical mosques she noticed a change in his personality.
He began to visit mosques in London, Luton and up north on his own. His behaviour gradually began to change. He turned from the man I married. In hindsight, I can now see what was happening to him and why. How these people could have turned him and poisoned his mind is dreadful.
Samantha Luthwaite has described the last time she saw her husband alive here at the home they rented in Aylesbury. There'd been a row over the increasing amount of time he was spending away from the family home, and she told him to leave. But later that night, she said he returned briefly, slipping into his son's room and kissing the sleeping toddler, before leaving again, this time forever.
He kissed our child goodbye and then crept off to blow up King's Cross. In the morning, I found he'd left the keys on a table downstairs. He obviously had no more use for them.
Samantha has kept a text message from her husband on her phone. It reminds her of the loving man she once knew, a man who changed so much he didn't wait to see his daughter born, but instead chose to kill and to die. One day, Samantha knows, she'll have to tell her children the whole story of who their father was and what he did. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Still to come on the evening news, they're called the Guinea Pig Club, remembering the man whose pioneering surgeries saved the lives of hundreds. James Earl Ray, the man convicted of the murder of the civil rights leader Martin Luther King, has told a hearing
And
of the
back
House
for
of
our 50th birthday, Anna's memories of her time presenting the news on ITV.
But first, a positive step. That was how the cosmetic giant Rimmel today described the public apology from Kate Moss over allegations of her cocaine use. Nevertheless, tonight her multi-million-pound modelling career still hangs in the balance. The 31-year-old was discovered by the Storm Model Agency at the age of 14 and performed her first catwalk show at 15. From there, she's gone from strength to strength, amassing a fortune of £30 million from her years at the top, and earning a reputed £1.3 million a year. Now her deal with the few companies that haven't dropped her depends very much on what Katie does next.
The lyrics were written about Kate Moss by her boyfriend before her cocaine crisis. Now she has apologised. The question is, what will she do next? Clearly, she must go into rehab, but it won't be easy.
My whole life was controlled by drugs. I woke up in the morning just to take drugs.
This young fashion model has just completed a rehabilitation program for cocaine and alcohol addiction. How hard was it to stop?
To stop, it was one of the most hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. It was completely torturous.
It's likely Kate will also take a low profile now, perhaps go away for a year whilst the scandal dies down, though some say that's not enough. Only a confession on television will do, according to some. Tara Palmer Tompkinson did a television interview after her cocaine scandal. Now she's back presenting TV.
The apology yesterday to me came across as empty. I'm losing a lot of money, so I'll put out this statement, was what came across, and I think that's how the public have perceived it. So if she wants to turn it around, if she wants to save a career or indeed a life, then she's got to be for real.
Rimmel's full volume lipstick. Cosmetic company Rimmel today welcomed the apology from Kate Moss, but their statement made clear they will be watching, and insiders say there are signs the weekend's newspapers may have more revelations. Keir Simmons, ITV News.
Right, let's get some more of tonight's news now. And a 67-year-old woman today admitted killing her grown-up son, who has Down syndrome. 36-year-old Patrick Marcrow was killed at the family home in Buckinghamshire in March last year. He was suffocated with a plastic bag after being given sleeping pills.
The jeweller has escaped unhurt after he was shot by robbers in West Sussex. Incredibly, the man was saved by the battery of his mobile phone, which cushioned the impact of a bullet that was aimed at his chest.
And the leader of the Scottish Nationalists today attacked Tony Blair at the party's annual conference in Aviemore. Alex Salmond said Blair's Britain was full of dirty games, and he blamed the war in Iraq for fanning the flames of terrorism.
He was a pioneer of plastic surgery who saved the lives of hundreds of Second World War airmen. They became known as the Guinea Pig Club, and today they gathered for possibly the final time.
So Archibald McIndoe's techniques in plastic surgery used to treat horrendous burns injuries are still employed to this day. Lawrence McGinty reports on the honouring of a wartime hero.
It was the most exclusive club in the world, a club nobody wanted to join. The members were RAF crews who'd been badly burned and treated by the surgeon Archie McIndoe at Queen Victoria Hospital in East Grinstead during the Second World War. I met one of them, Jack Toper, at the RAF Museum in Hendon. His face and hands were badly burned by an explosion on his Wellington, just like this one.
There was my nose that was gone, there was my cheek that was gone.
McIndoe pioneered a new skin grafting technique using a tube of living skin from Jack's arm to rebuild his face.
That sausage, or petit will be transferred from from the stomach to the wrist, to the face, and eventually you'd have it hanging round, and half of what we cut used for the nose and the other half for the cheek.
But Mackindoe didn't only pioneer new surgical techniques, he also recognised the need for psychological rehabilitation.
Well, Mackindoe used to encourage crates of beer under the bed. He ran that hospital like a country club, and it just so happened that in between the fun, you had an operation.
And amazingly, today's generation of plastic surgeons are still using the techniques that Mackindoe pioneered.
Mackindoe was probably the most influential plastic surgeon of our time, and many of the principles that he taught us are still the foundation of how we reconstruct and manage patients in plastic surgery and in burns.
As years pass, fewer and fewer members are fit enough to come to reunions of the Guinea Pig Club. This could be the last, and our last chance to recognise the sacrifice they made and the achievement of their doctors. Lawrence McGinty, ITV News.
Now, this week, you may remember, we brought you the story of children at Joseph Leckey School in Walsall. They did this. They made their own video to highlight the shocking state of their school buildings.
So, is your school up to scratch? Do you have a complaint to make? If you go to a shoddy school, we want to know about it. So tell us your stories and send us your pictures by emailing us at schools@itn.co.uk. That's schools@itn.co.uk.
And we look forward to hearing from you. Now, a reminder of tonight's main news. 24 elderly Americans have been killed trying to escape from Hurricane Rita. They died when their evacuation bus burst into flames.
A 34-year-old Briton has been jailed for 15 years for terror offences. Andrew Rowe, arrested near the Channel Tunnel 2 years ago, was found guilty of possessing articles for use in terrorism.
And the widow of the man behind one of the London tube bombings has spoken of having to tell her children what their father did.
And the headlines in London tonight. Detectives have arrested a 17-year-old over the murder of teenager Kashif Mahmood in Ilford on Tuesday. And BMW on Park Lane is paying almost £300,000 a year in congestion charges for parking only 200 yards inside the zone.
Now, to end the programme, we're just going to focus on ourselves for a moment, and in particular on Anna, who's kindly joined us tonight to celebrate 50 years of news on ITV. Now, it doesn't seem like a day, but when were you last presenting the news on ITN?
Well, I hate to say it, but it was 25 years ago, Mark, and it's all gone in a flash. I've been rootling around this afternoon. It's been great fun in your archives, and I've found some nice little pieces of film which I think will bring back some memories.
Right, let's have a look.
Good evening. We devote most of the second half of News at 10 to a special report. And tonight's main news again. Mrs. Thatcher is about
I'd been at ITN for less than a year when the 1979 general election was called. At crack of dawn, I joined the world's media outside Margaret Thatcher's house in Chelsea.
Mrs. Thatcher, quick word. Are you feeling nervous?
You're feeling optimistic, Sarah.
We're just reserving judgment.
Other major stories from abroad made the headlines in the late 1970s. In Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini led an Islamic revolution, ending the reign of an ancient monarchy and the incumbent Shah. I was on air with Reggie Bosanquet that night, and just before I read the intro to the report on Iran, a limerick floated down on top of my script. It was one of many limericks and doggerel we wrote each other during news bulletins. Another Iranian story, this time in London, came on a usually quiet bank holiday when a number of people were being held prisoner in the Iranian embassy. As pictures came in live, I was told to drop the script and talk to the pictures. It was an entirely new and extraordinary moment of news unfolding as we watched. For a time, I was medical correspondent at ITN. Looking back, it's astonishing how medicine has advanced. In those days, the fitting of one of the first bionic arms seemed closer to science fiction.
Where does it work? Where does it fix on? You point to it.
And I remember reporting on the then almost unheard of experimental laser treatment. One of my happiest memories of working here at ITN was meeting, working with and playing darts with Reggie, one of the nation's great natural heroes.
See you then, good night.
and thanks for us switching channels for the night.
It's been a pleasure. I've met some old friends and had a lovely day. Happy birthday.
Lovely to have you here. Thanks very much indeed. Now, next on the ITV News channel, it's been shot down by the critics, but are they right? Guy Ritchie's new release is among our weekly movie review. James Mates will be here later with tonight's news at 10:30, but from your ITV newsroom across the country, from me and from our special guest, bye-bye.
Goodbye.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by Powergen.
Hello there, good evening. It has been a rather wet end to the week for many parts of the UK. Chilly and dry conditions on the way for tonight, mostly fine and dry through tomorrow. So those temperatures tonight really are going to be dropping quite sharply under clear skies. Temperatures somewhere between around 4 and 6 Celsius, but getting an awful lot lower in places, and also away from the built-up areas, it's going to be cooler still. So I think we could see our first real frost of the season. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow morning, as you can see, a fair amount of brightness, lovely conditions there towards the east of the UK to start the day, but cloud thickening all the time. And in the afternoon, I think we are going to see rather more in the way of the cloud, a little bits of rain as well over towards the far west, and even as we move further eastwards, the sunshine getting ever more hazy, but temperature-wise not too bad. A high tomorrow of 19 Celsius. See you later.
Positive energy from Powergen.
He made his first British TV appearance on GMTV back in '97 and went on to become a multi-million selling global superstar. Now, the Latino lover is back with a brand new single. Join the gorgeous Ricky Martin for a chat and a salsa. Monday on GMTV.
Home Farm's a smoking wreck and Zoe's flown away. The Kings aren't happy. Emmerdale is next. Then Status Quo sample Betty's Hot Pot at 7:30.
Open your eyes to a more breathable contact lens. Introducing O2 Optics. New breathable monthly contact lenses that transmit up to 5 times more oxygen.
About this long.
Great.
Enjoy the best of both worlds. Visit PC World online and in store.
PC World.
Get ready for a big Saturday night. Anton Deck warm up for the game show marathon at 6:05. At 7:05, here is where the competition really starts. In the X Factor, then tension mounts in Millionaire.
They are just 2 questions away from winning £1 million.
And at 9:10, there's new drama, Afterlife.
What you're looking for is not always what you find.
That's Saturday night, here on ITV1.
They've rocked all over the world, and tonight they stop off in the Rovers for a pint and some of Betty's Hot Pot. Status Quo in Weatherfield. 2 visits to Coronation Street tonight, first in half an hour and again at 8:30. Now though, what's left of Home Farm?
I think there's something up with mine.
Mine doesn't seem that healthy either.
Mine's out of control!
If only they'd known.
Calgon prevents limescale tragedies. Calgon, sponsors of Emmerdale.